Conference will now be recorded.
There it goes.
Okay.
And I'm going to turn the floor over to him.
Yeah, thanks, Roy. I'm Eli Fernie, JR Engineering. I'm a principal with our firm. We've got 4 offices across Colorado, Denver, Fort Collins, Colorado Springs, and Genesee. We're worked with Roy on a number of projects over the years, but our current project is the 52 and College intersection. And yeah, as Roy mentioned, we're just working with CDOT kind of on the early stages of this project and trying to figure out if it makes more sense to do a roundabout or a traffic signal. So we wanted to get out to the public to get everybody's input. So yeah, we'll start with a little presentation here and to give you guys a little bit of background on the project and the alternatives. So we've also got David Roush, the city engineer, and then I've got Reed Olson, our project engineer on the project. Okay, project overview. So what we're going to go over, we're going to share a little bit of the background of the 52 and College Avenue intersection. We're going to explain which alternatives are being evaluated. We're going to look at the traffic signal and roundabout options. There could have been a lot of other options we could have analyzed, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. And then we want to gather your input on the alternatives. A little bit of project background. This initially was a locally funded CIP project. The city was originally installing or considering a traffic signal, especially kind of with the lane geometry that was built on College with the 2 lanes northbound, 2 lanes southbound, some of the accel decel lanes on 52. It's always been set up for a signal, but it wasn't until we approached CDOT and CDOT said, whoa, you guys need to analyze different alternatives. You can't just put a signal in there. And they're having us go through a process called an intersection control analysis, or an ICA. It is a state process. Fort Lupton's not being singled out. It's being done all over the state. So we're kind of on the initial part of that on that process. The ICA ensures the solution is appropriate for safety, operations, and long-term needs. So what is an intersection control analysis? It's really a performance-based evaluation of multiple intersection options. It compares alternatives using safety, traffic operations, cost, social, environmental, and economic impacts. And what it does is it really creates a transparent and consistent decision-making process that we've gone through, and we really have looked at the alternatives and we're picking the best alternative for the intersection. The ICA has been around quite a long time. CDOT just adopted it, but it's been used by other states such as Caltrans in California, Washington State, Wisconsin, Georgia. In fact, CDOT's tool that they're having us use to analyze alternatives is actually based on Georgia DOT's tool. And like I said, it really helps agencies determine the best intersection for the location. Okay, we'll get into the alternatives. The 2 we're looking at that are feasible for this intersection are the traffic signal and a roundabout. There could have been a huge list of other things we could have looked at, from closing the intersection to moving it to doing just yield control. We could have done crazy stuff like a continuous flow intersection, like there's one down at Gun Club in Quincy and Aurora. We could have done a grade separation, but that would have wiped out everything around the corner. But really the feasible options here are the traffic signal and the roundabout. You can see some of the pros and cons of a signal and a roundabout. Signals have a smaller footprint, a little bit lower construction costs. They're familiar to drivers. You got signals around the city. Some of the cons are the higher crash severity. You're dealing with higher speed traffic, so the severity goes up on the signals. There's ongoing maintenance costs, and they're less effective for speed control. Now the roundabout really slows traffic, calms that traffic, so your severity of your accidents goes down on roundabouts. And roundabouts keep traffic moving unless you have a really imbalanced flow of traffic. in general, the roundabouts will keep traffic moving. But some of the cons are they're a larger footprint in the signal, higher construction costs, and they can be less familiar to drivers, especially when it's the first one that goes into a city. Now I'll turn to Reed to kind of talk about some of the specific pros and cons for this intersection.
Yeah, like Eli mentioned, we're mainly evaluating the two alternatives being a signal and a roundabout. The first one here is just kind of a general overview of a traffic signal. It's nothing crazy. It's what you're used to of a traditional signalized intersection with red, green, and yellow lights. This one is kind of configured to have those protected left turns, so you don't have to worry about trying to find a gap in traffic or anything like that. And then on the next slide too, there's the more detailed pros and cons that Eli was talking about. So on the left there's our pros. Generally, signals are a smaller footprint than roundabouts, so they take up less space, which is nice in areas where you're constrained in terms of right-of-way or something like that. And in addition to that, there's also that lower construction cost generally tied to that smaller footprint and other factors. The other things are, as most people are familiar with traffic signals and have a better level of comfort with those over a roundabout. So it makes it easier for drivers to navigate. And with that too, they're a little bit more flexible than a roundabout in that you can adjust their signal timings for different peak hour traffic, or if you need to come back in the future and adjust the cycle length or something like that, they're a little bit more malleable in that sense. And speaking to that as well, they're easier to accommodate for heavy trucks because a roundabout, as I'll get into later, you have to design specifically for trucks for their different turning radius, whereas you don't have to do that with a traffic signal. So it gives it a little bit more flexibility. And related to that timing piece as well, it's easier to coordinate with signals. So if another signal got installed along that Hwy52 corridor, you could easily program that to coordinate with a signal downstream, so you're not creating like delays or blockages or something like that. But then speaking to the cons of a traffic signal, they typically have that higher crash severity. So those like T-bones or right angle crashes or more conflict points are present in a traffic signal. And so those crashes end up being a little bit more severe than you would see in a roundabout. In addition to that, like Eli mentioned, they're less effective at reducing speeds because, as you've probably all seen, somebody could just blow a light. Whereas with a roundabout, you have to go around the center median island, so you're kind of forced to slow down. And then as well as that, there's, with it being signalized, it's connected to our power, so it's susceptible to outages and any sort of malfunctions, whereas a roundabout's completely off the grid. There's no utilities tied to that. And that's kind of tied into like ongoing maintenance costs, outages, things like that. And then as you are accounting for pedestrians too, you have to designate certain phases of a signal, so that can also cause a little bit of delay for drivers. That's kind of the more in detailed overview of a pros and cons of a traffic signal. Here's just the brief summary of a roundabout. It's that circular intersection that's not as common as a traffic signal. It's usually signed with yield control, so the idea is for traffic to not have to stop. They only have to yield for anybody coming from their left. So it makes it so traffic doesn't have to stop, and it typically is helpful at reducing speeds.
I was just gonna, can we go back real quick, David? I was just gonna mention, there's obviously a lot of roundabouts in Colorado. Some are single lane, which you see more in neighborhoods, and then some are actually 2-lane. Based on the traffic volumes in Hwy52, we're looking at needing a 2-lane roundabout there just to accommodate the 20-year traffic projections.
And like we had with the traffic signal, there's just a couple pros and cons for a roundabout as well. One of the biggest strengths being that it reduces those severe crashes just because drivers are forced to slow down. So if there is an impact, it's not only at a lower speed, but it's also eliminates those right angle or head-on collisions. They're more of like grazes or clips, or someone's changing a lane, you might like hit that side swipe a little bit. So in that regard, they're considered generally safer for those severe crashes. And then as well as that, like I've been saying, they reduce your speed going through. And another thing too is along 52, the posted speed limit's kind of high. So traffic going along 52 kind of has to slow down as kind of a gateway into the city. That way, you know, somebody's not blowing through the streets at 45 miles an hour as you get closer in. Yeah, exactly. The speed limit's more of a suggestion, it feels like. But,
With the Jake brakes.
With the Jake brake going in my house.
and then like I mentioned earlier, the roundabout doesn't rely on any traffic signal equipment or any anything that would require power. So if there is some sort of outage or severe weather that might affect a signal, a roundabout's obviously not going to have to deal with that. And then as far as a safety improvement, like I've been saying, it's a more long-term safety performance is better typically than a signal. But then also in terms of cons, the most evident one is that it has a larger footprint. And so like you saw on the slide before, but there's also the exhibits kind of posted around the room for the in-person folks. It takes up more space just because it's circular. So, you know, you have to rotate traffic through the intersection without stopping. So that can be a concern if there's like right-of-way constraints or something like that. And then generally, due to that footprint and some other factors, it has typically a higher construction cost. The utility coordination piece on there is usually if you have any existing conflicts, you have to coordinate with utility owners to make sure, you know, you're not digging on someone's line or you won't accidentally cut someone's power or something like that. And then as well, like I mentioned earlier, for heavy trucks, the width or diameter radius, however you want to phrase it, for a roundabout has to be made in order for those trucks to turn safely at each exit point. So there's a little bit more of a thought process that goes into that compared to your traditional signal. And then those last two bullet points there talking about pedestrians and cyclists, because traffic doesn't stop, you're expected to yield to a cyclist or a pedestrian, whereas a signal gives them a dedicated phase. And so if you're crossing a major roadway like 52, you might have to install those flashing beacons just so people are a little bit safer.
Yeah, if you guys are up in Breckenridge and a couple of those roundabouts there, they've got the flashing beacons to accommodate those higher pedestrian crossings. Yeah.
And then the slide's intended just kind of as a summary of those pros and cons I just talked about, comparing the traffic signal to the roundabout. And I think I'll turn it back over to Eli to talk about the speeds in the area.
Indeed. So this graphic, it's a little hard to see, but the existing speed limit, as you guys will aware, is 55 on Highway 52, which is shown in the red line here. With the signal, we would propose to reduce that speed to 45 somewhere east of the intersection, and we would keep that consistently at 45 until it steps down further to the west, and it would tie into that existing 45 speed zone as you approach Raleigh. With the roundabout, which is this top line, again, we would want to step the speed down to 45, but then we'd probably do another step down to 35 as you approach the roundabout. We really haven't laid this out yet because we didn't want to put too much detail in the design, but to step that speed down going westbound, we'd put a series of deflection curves in the horizontal alignment as you approach the roundabout, so it would really slow you down to more of that 25 to 20 speed that you should be at when you're entering the roundabout. Highway 9 between Frisco and Breckenridge is a good example of where they've used deflections to slow that traffic down on some of those two-lane roundabouts.
You're actually talking about building a chicane coming into it?
It's not really a chicane. It's more of just a kind of a, you would kind of go into a larger curve and then it would kind of wrap into a tighter curve. So it kind of deflects back and forth to really slow you down before you enter the roundabout. Okay. If you don't do that, then you may have the issue of traffic going in too fast into the roundabout and they end up crossing both lanes.
Got a question.
Yep.
The two lanes heading west, where does that start tapering back down to the one lane? I know the future shows two lanes.
Yeah.
But when would you taper that?
Great question. Yeah, I think in reality what this would look like is these are called the splitter islands.
Mm-hmm.
I think this splitter island, especially on this east leg, would probably extend out a little bit further, maybe a few hundred feet. And we would start to develop that deflection as we're going west into the roundabout. So maybe a few hundred feet. I think we could hold one lane as we approach, and then when we hit the splitter island, we could open it up into 2 lanes. Eastbound, we probably would keep it 2 lanes on the exit and then just do a merge left and get it back to 1 lane. Again, on this side, probably similar design. We could hold 2 lanes for a while, but the existing section obviously is 1 lane each direction, so we'd have to transition that back at some point. But we can work with there's a lot of lane drops through there, so we can kind of work with those as well too.
What do you mean by lane drop?
Well, I think there's an Excel decel lane. I can't remember specifically, but I think as you approach Raleigh, I don't remember exactly.
I can tell you exactly.
Yeah.
0 for left hand, if you're going west.
Mm-hmm.
There's no left turn lanes. You're stopping to turn in. 55-mile-an-hour traffic behind you.
Mm-hmm.
And we've only had 3 people killed there. So, I would think they would look at slowing that down consistently to 45, 35.
35.
Yeah, I think the slower we can get that speed, I think the better. Yeah.
The point is too, there is no place in the city of Fort Lupton that has 45 or 55 mile an hour in subdivisions.
Okay.
I mean, we're putting another 275 homes right there, plus what's across the street. That's a shit pot full of cars.
Sure.
And I think, danger of the speed is danger in the noise of the speed. Something we really need to look at in addition to a roundabout or a light.
Indeed, and I think this project is a great opportunity to really not only do the intersection, but kind of tie this in with the corridor to the west. And CDOT's kind of mentioned that too. They're like, think through this, and it probably turns into a longer length speed analysis, probably all the way to the tracks to understand that we're doing the right thing for the city.
Even safely. I mean, it hits 45 and then goes to 35 very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think in like 4 blocks
Yeah.
or something, like yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a little bit concerning, especially for people that have kids that like back up. Like you have semis, I'm surprised nothing has come through those houses.
Sure.
Accidents
Yeah.
and, I mean, it is, I mean, there's cars, but it is the big rigs.
Mhm.
I mean, it is those semis, and I'm not lying that 3 in the morning, they're shaking my house.
Yeah. It's too
Is there
bad.
any plan to reroute those, or?
I think it would be in a state highway. That's pretty difficult to do. Yeah, because that is the route they're told to take.
Yeah.
Because I don't think there's
Restrictions.
I don't think there's really other good alternatives for east-west travel through this area. So I think we've got to work with the trucks, but then we've got to use this project to really analyze the speeds from not only this location, but going west all the way at least to Raleigh,
Yeah,
if not the tracks, and just make sure it
Yeah, when they're
all
going
makes
to
sense.
speed
Yeah.
limit, I mean,
Yeah.
it's okay, it's like, it's okay, but
Mm.
At one point in time, the city wanted to route the trucks from Raleigh south to one of the, I think it was Road 6 or one of
Is
those,
it County Road 8 or 6? Yeah.
but the field of Road 12 never got developed yet.
Oh, gotcha.
So
okay.
that was still taking to Raleigh
Mm-hmm.
versus.
But it's definitely, I mean, a lot of cities deal with the state highways running right through the center of their town. I worked with the city of Aspen years ago with the highway running straight through their town. It was an issue. I've worked with Windsor a little bit with 392 going through their downtown. It's a challenge to try to balance what the city needs for traffic volumes, pedestrians, and safety versus what CDOT needs to be able to accommodate regional truck traffic. And so we've got to balance those two. So we went through the alternatives, the signal and the roundabouts, and now we're getting to the public input stage. What we're asking you to do is think about the traffic signal versus roundabout and tell us which one you like. Do you like them both? Do you like one? Do you like the other? That input's going to help us guide our decision as we work with CDOT. What is not being considered today is the final engineering. We haven't gotten into that point yet. We want to select an alternative first before we spend the time to final design it. We don't know the exact right-of-way limits yet. This is like the roundabout. This is conceptual at 150-foot diameter, but this may need to increase a little bit. But we're also dealing with constraints up on this corner with the new development. So we've got to.
Are these to scale?
They are to scale, yeah, for sure. But we've got constraints on this corner here, constraints with the structure on the irrigation canal to the south. Probably a little bit less constraint on the college site and this corner. This corner, Roy, is not in the city, correct?
Right.
Yeah, it's still in the county. This would be a right-of-way acquisition on this corner. Utility relocations we haven't gotten into yet. Like we talked about, utilities can be challenging with the roundabout. If there was a water line going straight through the intersection, there's not so good.
There is one going north to south, but it is way.
Yeah. Cool. The cool thing is with the roundabout is you can put lots of statues, landscaping and stuff in there, but but
I hate
but-
about roundabouts.
but-
If I drive a passenger
Yeah.
car and they put in ornamental grasses.
Yeah.
I can't see traffic.
but but that's
Yeah.
but that's done on purpose because it makes you slow down because you can't see across it. That's one of the design.
There it is, Travis. It
Yeah.
really is.
It's a design trick that us engineers do. But if there was a water line in here and you try to plant a tree over that turns into issues. So a lot of times water and sewer lines have to be rerouted around the center island. And then at this point, we don't know construction schedule. That'll be driven by our final design. How to provide feedback. We've got in-person comment cards over there on the side. You can fill those out, give them to us. You can use social pinpoint. QR code's only going to be on the next slide. You can email comments to the city. We're asking for a deadline on February 11th, which is 2 weeks from today. And then once we gather that input, we'll meet with the city, review everybody's decision on what you guys want. We'll finalize ICA recommendation, and then we'll work with CDOT on concurrence of that.
When do you think you will do that?
I would expect probably later into February. Hopefully we can make a submittal to CDOT in March timeframe. Yeah. And then we'll provide you guys an update on what that recommendation is.
How flexible are they being?
They are very flexible. We actually met with Katrina Cloberdens with Region 4, and she likes both options. So
What
There-
do you think about speed limits?
she says we need to review the speed limits and make sure we're thinking about how that works going west, how it works with pedestrian crossings, how it works with bicycles. This pedestrian crossing here is critical with the college and the homes and the trail being built up here. We want to make sure this crossing is
That's what-
designed safely for
Do
sure.
we have studies that look at pedestrian traffic and pedestrian collisions with cars at all?
I mean, we don't have any specific studies for this area because right now there's no pedestrians there, but when the sidewalks get built, it'll change for sure. Yeah.
You have a bus across there, maybe
But
little
yeah,
lights.
the best practice is at this point is to install the flashing beacons for the pedestrians. And then we put a lot of advanced warning signs in on 52 as well.
Will your study include the additional exit point of this new subdivision here, going across to the golf course?
I don't know if I'm aware of that one.
Nobody talking about this? Jerry Drive?
Oh, on farther, now, we're specifically looking at this intersection, but, what we do here potentially can translate to Jerry Drive and Coyote Creek too.
Because that's the new one, is the additional, from the left hand or right side.
Quick question, there's quite a bit of large trucks on the new-ish roundabout, County Road 6 and 13. Are you looking at that as far as radius and things like that?
Yeah, we can definitely look at that as an example. JR Engineering's designed a lot of roundabouts. In fact, we just designed one for City of Greeley on O Street and 59th. We had the design for large trucks on that one. So we've got specific software that helps us to model the trucks as they go through the roundabout. In fact, with this conceptual layout, this gray is what's called a truck apron. So it allows the truck trailer to kind of swing up over a 3-inch curb and, of course, not wipe out all the stuff in the center island or the flowers or the statue of the mayor.
I've got an online question.
Sure.
It's by Kendra. And have you considered a roundabout as more likely to reroute traffic to other routes, specifically County Road 31 to County Road 16 or 9th Street, and that those streets may not be able to handle the additional traffic?
That's a good question for sure. I don't think we've really analyzed that in detail, but I would have a hard time envisioning that traffic that utilizes 52 as an east to west regional connection would want to get off and use a different route. 52 still has the higher speed and traffic signs. Yeah. So it's definitely something we can look at, but I don't see that being a major factor.
No, I think, I hope you all are looking at the number of automobiles that we put into these new.
We sure.
An additional 500, 600 automobiles and 2 little subdivisions.
Yeah, there's a lot of development going on. In fact, the traffic signal itself is, well, let me back up. A signal has to be warranted through FHWA guidelines. And there's different warrants we look at. There's an 8-hour warrant, a 4-hour warrant, and a peak hour warrant. And the signal actually does not meet warrants with existing volumes that are there today. But when we project out all the development traffic that's being added to the intersection, plus the new city hall to the north, that's when the signal is warranted. So
Even with another 500 vehicles in addition to what's going there, it still doesn't work.
it did not warrant with the existing volumes that were there today. Yeah.
I'm talking about the additional 500.
So it does when you add in all the additional traffic from those homes.
That's why
Yeah.
we're preemptively going in. We've
Yeah.
actually tried this 2 times before and see that kicks it back. You don't meet the warrant yet.
Yeah.
And we keep looking ahead and seeing Morada's coming,
Yeah.
Vista Meadows, High Point, all those that are coming.
And
And
remember that name, don't remember.
so,
But they did like our latest warrant study.
Yeah.
In fact, they're like, we concur with this. And we need to stay ahead because a signal between the design, signal poles themselves take about 6 months to manufacture. And then with the construction process, we're probably looking at a year to 2 before a signal is actually up and operational. Not to scare you, but just
if I could, if you've got a phone, scan the QR code. We'll take you to our engagement site. When you get there, if you would register, then you can follow the projects and you'll get emails when something is updated on that page. There's a specific page for this intersection. There's only 2 pages right now. One's transportation plan and then this intersection. So as things develop, we'll be getting more input off of this page. Plus there's an option to vote. Give me your opinion. I've got 2 questions up there. One, do you like roundabouts at all? And you can vary from, I really don't like this as your top option, to all the way to like, I like this. And everything in between. If you don't care, it's like a number in the middle. And then the final one is voting for basically signalized or roundabout. And then this is going to stay active for 2 weeks. We're going to put a new Facebook post out with this QR code. That page will have added to it tonight's presentation. So everybody will have a chance to review that and get all the information and invite your neighbors to go vote. Review the information and let's see. We really want your input. We want everybody's input.
I have one other question that came in the chat.
Mhm.
And it was, you mentioned the severity of accidents with the light, but what option causes higher frequency of accidents?
That's really kind of driven more specifically to, individual locations. It's hard to really measure because that's going to be based on the volumes at an intersection. So usually as the volumes increase, you're probably going to see more accidents. So that one's kind of, we could estimate how many crashes may be there for a signal versus a roundabout, but you really can't compare the two because it's going to be based on the overall volumes at the intersection.
Kind of a follow-up to that. Since it sounds like either option will be a gradual speed decline. Oh, sorry, that was the follow-up to that
Gotcha.
question. And then I got another comment that I believe speed is a big factor in accidents, and we need to lower the speed limit on the whole of 52.
Definitely. And that's going back to that previous slide with the speed map that we would want to at least a minimum step it from 55 down to 45, and then with the roundabout bring it down to 35.
You know what's funny though? 85, old 85 south through the city is 35. I don't know how they did that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
When you hit Brighton, it goes to 45. So I would assume that we should be, something close to that.
Mhm.
We got north of 55 in the city as well.
Indeed, yeah. Yeah, 55 is definitely too fast for in the city, and it's very dangerous for signalized intersections. So 45 is typically that upper threshold that cities use for arterial roads.
45, would you all recommend where somebody's going west and has to turn left into the subdivision, the left-hand lane versus turn lane?
Yeah, so you're referring to with the traffic signal? Yeah, we'd have a left turn lane going westbound, plus a right turn lane, and then the same thing going eastbound, left turn lane, right turn lane.
I mean, when you're past that, because there's going to be two more intersections to get into the neighborhood, the new neighborhood and Apple Farms. You're going west past that area, and I have to turn left to go to my house, which I do. It's dangerous. Try to turn your left turn signal on these guys back here again.
So that there's no left turn lane. I mean, I think.
No, there is no left turn.
Okay, so that's probably not being considered with this project, but we can look at that with the transportation plan. Yeah.
If needed.
Oh,
Definitely.
absolutely. We've had what, 3 or 4 people killed?
Yeah,
well,
not our intersection, but the one up above.
Right.
That's why it'd be critical to keep that 35 all the way through.
Yeah.
We've got another internet or chat question is, do you have data on the number of pedestrian accidents on roundabouts with the amount of pedestrians that this area will see?
We don't at this point. It's definitely something we could look at doing, but it would require us to estimate the number of pedestrians that would be walking across this intersection. I mean, right now there's nobody, so it's all going to be based on estimates, but it's definitely something we could look at if it's definitely a concern to the city.
And another one, do we know the current volume of traffic and the projected volume of traffic over time?
We do. I don't have those numbers in front of me. Actually, it's in that warrant study, right?
Yeah, I think it should be.
Maybe David, maybe we can follow up on that because we do have those.
Sure.
If they're.
And
Yeah.
I would add, that's part of the transportation study to
Yeah.
have that currently analyzed and protected.
Yeah.
For traffic volume.
Well, from this diagram, it looks like, is the state gonna widen? Are we gonna have 4 lanes?
The traffic demand ultimately says we would need 4 lanes on 52, but the state probably has no plans, at least in the next 10 years, to go to 4 lanes. So what would,
Okay, so it'll stay the 1 lane the way it is now with the
what,
roundabout in here?
yeah, what I envision is the roundabout would be 2 lanes, just like you see it here. But then in this 4-lane section would transition back to the 2-lane section on both the east side and the west side. But I'd propose that we at least build this roundabout to the ultimate footprint so we can get the whole thing in at once. Because it's hard to go back in the future and widen a roundabout. You could make a center island larger if you wanted to just do a single lane now, but it kind of makes more sense if we're in there to build the full roundabout. That's very, yeah. Having the 2-lane roundabout plus the apron is going to be definitely better for the truck traffic. And then if we have the random truck that's pulling a wind turbine blade, that's going to happen. That's going to be better as well.
You know, too, if you're going east, to go, if you have just a single lane around that roundabout and you wanna go to the college, you know, you have to, exactly.
Mhm.
to the way around.
Yep.
Well, and then the oncoming traffic, if it's a single lane, you know, to get in there.
Stop
Mhm.
everything.
Mhm.
I've got another question that came in, and it is, when will we see some sort of lighting on Highway 52? I can't see anything on the dark road.
Bring your headlights.
I would assume that would have to be a city improvement at some point.
We did just put the light up there at 52, or replace the
The-
light.
Streetlights.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I believe Murata's got one for the Jerry. Yeah, but those two are coming. We'll probably short one and would have to add one at the Apple. I don't know, if we got one at the Apple. Is there a light there?
Yes.
Yes.
There is a
Yep.
light? Okay.
So I've got an additional one. Do you have a diagram picture of what the proposed roundabout will look like? That'll be on our Engaged website.
Mhm.
So for future access.
There's actually a slider picture on there, if you haven't seen it yet, that you can slide the slider and see the roundabout
Overlay.
or the intersection. It's kind of cool.
Is the QR code going to show up in, if I'm talking to people and say, oh,
It will be on the next Facebook post
okay, good.
to directly link to this, that engagement site. Yeah.
I guess I have a sort of a question and I don't know if you can estimate. So I guess if we put a street light in, again, my issue is the speed.
Mhm.
And we can just drop the speed limit, but no one really follows the speed limit. And I know our police force is really stretched, so that's always been kind of, I mean, it's kind of a smaller town growing, so that's the bigger issue. So I feel like, is that gonna be like 85 where we just have people, I mean, we try to avoid 85 as much as we can
Mhm.
because you have cars, big trucks, they just blow through those lights, like they're optional.
In other words, is Frank Azar gonna be using this?
Yeah.
Yeah, you'll
Yeah,
see
yeah.
a billboard right
Just wonder if
there.
all y'all are gonna be on there.
I mean, yeah, with the traffic signal, there always is that safety concern that somebody could run a red light. That's every signal across the country you drive through, somebody could
Yeah.
run a red light. So we can only engineer so much on the signals to make them safe. I mean, we can do dilemma zone detection along Highway 52, which helps provide additional yellow time for trucks to slow down. Some of the radar detection's getting much more advanced than it used to be.
But that is
But,
one of the advantages of the roundabout, because
Yeah,
you pretty much have to slow down.
yeah,
You
it
have to-
slows
you
it
have to-
down,
you have to-
and
yeah,
you get
yeah.
a warning, yeah, far in advance. So
Indeed.
they
Yep.
know they can
Yeah, and
just-
that's what we're designing, yeah, to just lead up.
Yes, sir.
Do they have any roundabouts that have automatic spike strips go out and flash?
There's one. No, I'm just teasing you.
You're an engineer.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
If you guys want to drive more roundabouts, just go to Loveland and drive around for a day. I think Loveland has more roundabouts than any other city.
Yeah, they got quite a few. in
Boulder's
Golden.
got a few.
Spruce.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.